Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh episode of GTF, Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. What a night last night. The rebuild continues, and it was a milestone moment for the Chicago Bears organization and franchise history, really. And tonight, here at the Bar Room, starting at 6 p.m., Danny Shimon and Jordan Silvera and myself will take you through rounds 2 and 3. And then Greg Gabriel will be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with a special friend, and we'll go over rounds 2 and 3. Let me bring Greg in now. Greg Gabriel, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm doing really, really well. I couldn't have hoped for a better scenario than what happened yesterday.
Yeah, you know, when a head coach comes in and he has his introductory press conference, and they're always looking to see if they won the presser, if he wins the presser.
Yeah.
Well, the Bears won the draft.
That's right. I mean,
it's that simple. I mean, they got the guys they wanted. The offense is, has the potential to be very, very exciting. I just wouldn't expect too much from a rookie quarterback, being that there's only been 2 in the last 13 years that have led their teams to the playoffs, and that was Andrew Luck in 2012 and Stroud last year. But in saying that, the supporting cast that he has on offense is better than either one of those clubs had. So it'll. Yeah, we'll see how it plays out in the summer.
Mm-hmm. What I want to talk a lot of Bears here, but overall from the first round, were there any surprises other than the Michael Penix trade?
Excuse me. I wasn't surprised 6 quarterbacks went. I was surprised Atlanta took a quarterback at that spot. There was a lot of talk going on the last couple of days that 6 were going to go, but 6 went in the top 12. I mean, that's unprecedented.
Yeah.
And break down the numbers. How about only 9 defensive players were taken in the first round? 4 defensive end, 2 tackles. I counted Robinson as a tackle because he's like a 5 technique. So it'd be a 3-4 defensive end or a 4-3 technique. Then there's 3 corners, but on offense, 6 quarterbacks, 7 wide receivers, no running backs, 1 tight end, 8 tackles, and 1 center.
That's amazing. That is. Now, let me ask you, Greg, is that just, particular to this season and how the boards worked out? It's always kind of a throwing dice, or is it an indication that teams just want to improve offenses?
No, I think it's a year-to-year thing, Aldo. You got to look at what talent is available and how good is that talent. And in this case, I wouldn't surprise me. 7 wide receivers wouldn't surprise me if 9 went, and 2 less offensive linemen. But depending on where you pick, and if you have a need, you're saying, well, I got to get an offensive lineman, and where I pick in the second round, I'm not, it's going to drop off as far as the quality. I better get him now where there is going to be wide receivers. So, I mean, there's people that think 12 to 13 wide receivers that could go in the first 2 rounds, which means another 6 could go possibly tonight in the second round. That does not even count in the third round. And the third round is still going to be loaded with good receivers. I mean, there's probably at least 20 really quality receivers in this draft. Offensive line, now you've kind of wiped that out, except for the 2 centers that are left. People thought that the Oregon kid, Johnson Powers was a first rounder. You kept seeing in the last week or so that no, teams didn't have him as a first rounder. He'll go tonight. How fast tonight? That remains to be seen. Could be a guy. You know what's going to be interesting is that when they broke the draft up to 3 days. I'll go back when we used to have the draft Saturday and Sunday. You really wanted to have, when you got into Sunday, so day 2, you really wanted to have a high 4th round pick, because if that was the case, everybody was calling you, because you got all night to look at the board and reset it, and there's certain players that jump out at you that you really want, and so then you're making calls to try to get up in position to get those guys. I know the year that we took Alex Brown, we had 3 teams calling us to try to get into that position that we had. So it happens all the time. This year, the teams that are, in the top 5 or 6 of the second round, you got all day to look at that board today, and you're gonna have a love affair with somebody. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there's a few trades in the first 5 picks.
Yeah, I suspect that there could be a lot of trades tonight, but
I'm surprised. One of the things that surprised me is that the anticipation was there's going to be 3 or 4 trades in the top 10. There's one.
Yeah, interesting. The Bears, Ryan Poles said that they got some calls, but it was all kind of normal stuff, and things never really got heated up. But the one thing that was interesting was when Poles was talking about how Rome Odunze became available, and this is what he said late last night.
Ian and I sequenced the board out all the way across, and Rome was extremely high on that list. That's why I was nervous that he wasn't going to be there at 9. Our simulations, it was about a 50-50 shot if he was going to be there. But as it started to unfold, Ian had to hold me back from not trying to trade up and do something crazy to get him. But it ended up working out really well.
Right.
So it was obvious they really, really, really wanted Rome, even to the point where Poles was actually thinking about trading up, but his enforcer, Ian Cunningham, said, no, he's going to fall. Don't worry.
What's funny is that he was worried. And you know what? When you're eyeballing a certain player, you're always worried that somebody else wants them. Mm-hmm. But when you look at everything that's been going on, mock drafts and whatever, he was there all the time. So it sometimes you just over worry. Here's the funny thing, is that person I was talking to, who's close to some people in the Bears front office, and I specifically said to him, this was on Tuesday or Wednesday, I said, if Odunze is there, is that who they want? And his answer was, I'm told they want to get out. And so yet Odunze was there and they didn't. So even the information he had wasn't totally accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in listening to stories that you've shared and some other people through the media, when you say this is lying season, I mean, it even means lying to family and friends by these NFL sources, doesn't it? They're not going to reveal anything in most cases. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. But I know in this particular case, he's been told pretty accurately the last couple of years what's going to be going on. Mm-hmm. Now, I've got it sometimes after the fact, meaning, after the draft. Sure. But it's strange because knowing with that being the case, I almost expected a trade to happen. Mm-hmm. And then when you look, the only reason they trade is to get one of the edges. Then when you see where the edges went, the edges all went between, 12 and 20. When one went, they all went. But the only thing that's disappointing to me is the guy who's perceived to be the best, Dallas Turner, went to a division team in Minnesota. I thought Minnesota did really well between JJ and Dallas Turner. Looking at Detroit, they got the corner. good player. Is he going to be a difference maker? Who knows? It is a position in need for them. But, I think I've been a JJ fan, and between JJ and Dallas Turner, that's pretty good haul in the first round for Minnesota. Now, the bad news for the Vikings, good news for the rest of the division, they had to give up some picks. They got like 3 picks all next year. We thought we were hurting with 4 this year. They got 3.
Mm-hmm. Badass or Warthog asked your thoughts on our division's draft choices. So the Packers, and I don't have it in front of me, but the Packers have
Jordan Morgan, the tackle from Arizona.
Yeah,
and he can play really guard or tackle.
Right.
Do I love him? No. Is he a decent pick? Yeah. I mean, could he have gone in the second? Yeah. It wasn't going to go any higher than that. But, they had affinity for him. Is he going to play? Yeah. He'll start this year. How good is he going to be? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, it's interesting because they'll probably take a look at him at left tackle, but my guess is that they're going to move him inside and continue with Elton Jenkins, I believe, is the guy that took over after David Bakhtiari left.
Yeah, it's not unusual when you get a rookie tackle, and if you got somebody that's halfway decent, that you have them play guard the first year, get some experience, get confidence, and then move them out if you think he's capable of doing it. We did that in New York a bunch of times, even with first round picks. I remember, I think it was my second last draft in New York, maybe third last. We took Luke Pettigrew. We were drafting late in the round. We took Luke from Notre Dame, and we started him at left guard as a rookie. And then in the second year, moved him out to left tackle.
Yeah. Moving guys around is part of the business. So I want to play for you another soundbite from Ryan Post expressing his frustration regarding the history of the Chicago Bears, particularly the quarterback position.
History's the history. Like I'm kind of done talking about it. Like we go back so much all the time, and those days are over. So we're bringing players in here that want to really just change everything up and do things a different way. Obviously, we love our history here, but it hasn't been smooth recently, and it's time to change. So I feel like we got to stop going back all the time.
Right.
Greg, did you face that kind of frustration when you joined the Bears organization? Because there was a drought before you got here, and you and Jerry and everyone else associated with the organization took the team to the NFC Championship game, which you won, and went to the Super Bowl. Did you kind of face what Ryan Poles has been facing the last 2 years, 3 years?
No, not really. What's funny is that, when we came in, we took over a team that had not done that well. Dick Duran was the head coach, and Dick was on the hot seat. Mm-hmm. But we didn't get the job until June of 2001. So it was too late to make any changes then. So it became a situation where Jerry was told, if you want to make a change after this year, feel free. So we went into that season basically looking at, okay, who are our potential candidates? We were scouting potential coaches, and then we got like 13-3 that year, and Dick has to get extended. Mm-hmm. And, looking back, it's not what we really wanted to do, but how could you had to. You had no choice, especially when you had that kind of record. But then the next 2 seasons, the 02 season and the 03 season, were just disasters. But when we brought in Lovey then in 04, we had completely revamped the roster, especially the defensive roster and the defensive line in particular, because it was, playing the scheme that they're playing now. And we didn't have players that could fit that. Greg Blash, and I really like Greg Blash, who was the defensive coordinator under Dick. He wanted these big elephants. We had 3 defensive linemen, played a 4-3, but it was a 4-3 with 3-4 concepts. I mean, we had 1 at 320 and 2 at over 350. I mean, The only guy that was small was Alex Brown, and that was in his last year, which was 2003.
It's fascinating to look back at. And by the way, Roma Odunze expressed his admiration of Devin Hester. He saw some highlights of Devin Hester on YouTube to a Lil Wayne song and said, I like this player, and kind of modeled his play. Rome comes off as a really, really great guy. And this is him talking about what Bears fans can expect from him.
I think they're getting a versatile receiver. I think I do a lot of things well on the field, honestly, from playing outside, playing inside, catching contested balls, creating separation. I feel like I do all these things at a high level. So, and I'm looking to come and make that immediate impact, find my role within the team with great receivers like Keenan Allen and DJ Moore already there. Just finding my role within that and create avenues for the offense to have success.
Somebody made the joke in the chat room that the play call in the huddle is going to be who's next. In other words, who's going to get the ball next, because it's going to be shared. There's a lot of weapons on this team. How do you handle that?
What's interesting is that when you look at the skill set of the three, is that DJ can play the Z position. I mean, could he play X? Yeah, but he's a Z or a slot. And then when you look at Keenan Allen, he's an X or a slot. He played a lot of slot for the Chargers. And Odunze played all three. So you can intermingle them. Now, it's hard for a rookie to come in and learn two or three different wide receiver positions. Sometimes you try to just have him focus on one. But if he's smart enough, you can have him learn at least two. But I think the thing is that because they're able to play more than one position, it gives the offense the ability to seek out matchups. And so depending on the opponent and how strong they are at certain corner positions or at the slot position, you can move guys around just to create a better matchup. So it's and then, you've been saying all along that, Keenan Allen's probably going to be just a one-year guy here. Well, and that may have solidified itself with the drafting of Odunze. Might not have either. We'll see. Because he's had some injuries in his career, but he hasn't had like the big knee injury or anything like that. So hell, he caught over 100 passes last year. There's still a lot of football left in that guy.
Yeah, it definitely is. Let's get to some of the questions that we got here. I got questions from Big T, Scott, and Lee. Let's go to Steven Z first. Steven Zimmerman, co-host of South Burbs Hitmen, asked, Greg, what was the best pick of the first round in your opinion?
Well, I got it right in front of me. And, well, number one, a lot of picks went as expected. When you look at value of, let's say you use Daniel Jeremiah's board. Okay, so let's just say the first two picks, because the Bears had two. The Bears got number 1 and number 3 on DJ's board. So there's the answer right there.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of boards from people that we respect, prospect evaluators, had those two guys in their top 5 or at least top 10, which is great that when you can walk away.
Well, there was difference of opinion on how you stack the three receivers. I think when you looked at them as a group, it was like real close. Nobody separated himself from the other. Okay, when you went into the season, Marvin Harrison was head and shoulders above everybody else, but now that's not the case. And I think Neighbors has the best run after catch ability and is the most explosive. But when I'm looking at Harrison versus Roma Odunze, they're both big guys, long guys, run well. Harrison's never been timed, but he's probably a 10th faster or close to a 10th faster. He's pretty fast. but he doesn't have the run after that Odunze has. And Odunze's been a returner. He can return punts, and he's a pretty good one. So, I may want Odunze over Harrison, but when it gets to it, I've said it a few times in the last week. It's flavor. Which one? They're so close. It's which one fits what you want the best.
That's it. I love the taste of what the Chicago Bears have drummed up so far. Scott asked this great question. So what's going on at Halisaw's draft room today? Are they on their phones figuring out what it would take to move up in case someone they like drops? Are they rearranging the board? What exactly happens at the business hours during day 2?
Well, I don't think anybody would be there now. Get a little rest. Now, it wouldn't surprise me. They haven't announced anything, but it wouldn't surprise me if both Caleb and Rome are here today.
That's what I heard the media person say when they cut off questions to Caleb, saying, "Sorry, we ran out of time. We'll talk to you tomorrow." So maybe they're in town.
Yeah, I mean, because they're just in Detroit. You can send the plane over, get them here real quick, and you've got all afternoon to have a presser. Why wait until Monday when they're just an hour flight away, if even that? So I would think it's going to be this afternoon. Do you rearrange the board? No, your board's the board. You spent weeks putting that together. Now, as far as trading up, Ryan was asked that question last night, and I didn't listen to the entire presser because then you listen to the first 10 minutes, and that's good. And after that, you can start getting some mundane questions.
Tell me about it.
He was asked, he says it's a possibility, but he had and this is the key part, but what's it going to cost? And to get into the top half of the second round, that's not happening. They don't. They'd have to give up a 1 next year, and that means there'd have to be a player, in their opinion, that they have graded as a first round talent to do that. Yeah. So I can see them using. If you look at the Bears roster and you look at Carolina's roster, and they got both 2s for next year. The 2 that everybody's going to want is Carolina's. And so if you do try to use that to move up tonight, you probably got to use that number 75 and a 2. But you're doing that for a specific player. You're not moving up just to get into the second round. There's somebody you're targeting that you really want. And my opinion is, but I don't know if I'd want to give up that high 2, that potential high 2 to get there, is they still got to get an edge.
Right.
Okay. There's one on this team. There's one real pass rusher. Now, I threw it out last night on X, and I said, should they re-sign Ngakoue? And I would say it was 70-30 on answers I got.
70 against?
No, 70-4.
Okay.
30 against for Ngakoue to be re-signed, but it's what's it going to cost? But there are a few. I made a list, and there's some decent defensive tackles.
Yeah.
But if you're going to trade up into the second, it might be for a defensive tackle, not for a defensive end. But it's we don't know how the Bears board looks, so we're throwing darts at a wall. But I got guys that I like. Now there's one I don't like, but there's a lot of people that do like, and he's going to go. You probably go this round, and that is Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan. There's a lot of people that like him. Okay, Marshawn Nealon. The Bears need a pass rusher. Okay, Nealon had 4.5 sacks in the MAC. That ain't very good.
No.
You getting. Look at there's Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack, in his opening game of his last year at the University of Buffalo, also a Mack team, plays Ohio State. And he's going against a guy who plays for Detroit now as a first-round pick, and he has 2.5 sacks in the first freaking game at Ohio State. And this Nealon had 4 or 4.5 all year. Come on. And the Mack is not that good of a league. So is he going to get sack production in the NFL? I doubt it. Will he be a decent player? Probably. But is he what the Bears are looking for? Yeah, I wouldn't think so, knowing this scheme. And there's one thing I do is I know the scheme, so I know the type of players you're looking for. But after that, you got, and these are in no order because I just took them off a chart, but you got Chris Braswell from Alabama, who was opposite Dallas Turner, Adisa Isaac, who was opposite Chop Robinson, Braylon Trice from Washington, who I really liked going into the season, but then it was so-so. You know, he had 10 sacks in 2022 and actually dropped off this year, but played really well at the end of the season and, you know, in the Pac-12 championship game. And then again, like you might have got player of the game in the Pac-12 championship game. But when it got to the combine, he didn't test that well. So, you know, I'm not all fired up to try to get him, even though you would ask me 6 months ago, I would have said, yeah, that's the guy you really like, or 7 months ago. But a couple guys, 3 guys kind of jump out at me, and a fourth is got the potential to be pretty good. You've got Brennan Jackson from Washington State, who had, I think, 8.5 or 9 sacks at Washington State, playing in the Pac-12. Great motor. And he chases the ball all over. He's 100% every single play, snap to whistle. He's a good athlete. He doesn't have that bend and that dip that guys like Chop have or Dallas Turner have. But he's good. The guy he reminds me of is the Raiders defensive end who came from, Eastern Michigan, Max Crosby.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of, I went back and I looked when I was looking at Brennan Jackson's tape. I went back and put on tape from this, not Raider tape, but tape from Eastern Michigan, and very, very similar. And Crosby, I think, went in the 3rd round, and you got to hope that this guy gets to the 3rd round if they don't trade up. The one guy I really like, but he's undersized, so I don't know how the Bears will feel about him. But he reminds me, and Ian Cunningham is very familiar with this player, but Mo Camara is very similar to the Eagles' Brandon Graham. They're the exact same size coming out of college. Brandon Graham went in the 1st round. I think Graham is like 7 pounds heavier, but they're the same height, got about the same length. But the one difference is Mo Camara is almost 0.2 of a second faster. He's like a 4.57. He can really run. And another guy that's got a great motor, but he's only 6'1.5". But Brandon Graham is now going into like his 14th year or something like that. So that similarity's there. Is this guy going to play 14 years? Who the hell knows? But if you want a comp, that's the comp, in my opinion. Then there's another guy, but I sent a text out and I haven't gotten an answer yet. Jonah Ellis, who I really like. He's undersized. He's actually about the exact same size as Ngakoue was coming out. Didn't run a 40. He was injured, but he did run the agility drills in his pro day was just last week. And he had like a 6.69 3-cone at 248 pounds. That's outrageously quick, and explosive. He's only about, 248, 250. He'll probably be at 255 max guy when he gets into the league. He's 6'3". He's got good length, but he had a shoulder injury. How bad is that injury? I don't know the answer. I sent a text out to a guy to try to get it. I haven't heard back yet. and I probably won't hear back before this is over because I'm using my phone and I can't see what my texts are anyway. And then the sleeper is a guy, I watch a lot of Kansas games. And the reason I do is Ballard's son is the backup quarterback, and I've known Cole since he's been like 2 years old. So they got a defensive end who nobody thought was coming out. His name is Austin Booker. Now, Booker he's from the Indianapolis area. He's from a town just south of Indianapolis. Goes to Minnesota. Redshirts his first year. Doesn't play much his second year. He's a backup. Transfers to Kansas. Has a breakout year at Kansas this year. I think he had 8.5, 9 sacks. Real big effort guy. He's tall. He's long. Good athlete. Not an athlete like Chopper or Dallas Turner, but good enough. But the only thing I don't like is that he's lean. He's narrow. Narrow in the hips. He's got a small lower body. Is he going to be able to hold up playing the run, or is he just going to be a pass rusher?
Yeah.
So
he's got huge hands and like you said, he's very long. Nice wingspan.
Not real big in the lower body. It's lean, but great effort guy. And when you look at, he's really only played 1 year where he's been a regular, and he had excellent production. Everybody, in fact, in December, I was talking to Ballard and because I had brought him up, I said, "Hey, Chris, have you watched this Booker kid at Kansas?" I said, "He really jumps out." And he goes, "No, I haven't seen it. I'll ask Cole." So he calls me back. He goes, "Cole really likes him, when he said he's an outstanding kid and all that." Well, anyway, they didn't think he was going to come out. They thought he was coming back for 1 more year because he had 2 more years of eligibility. And he came out. He's not quite ready. So he's at best a rotational guy. So do you want to use a third on that, or do you want to use a third for a guy that, the upside may be there, but a couple of these other guys might be more productive and be able to step in and play a lot sooner.
You talked about the cost that it would take to move up to the second round, and Post mentioned it last night. Big T asked the question are any of these defensive ends that you just mentioned, are they worth moving up a bit to try to grab them? Is there one name that you would say, I would consider it if the offer was right?
I don't know what the Bears board looks like. There's 2 that I would consider trying to get into the back end of 2 if they were still there, and that is Jackson from Washington State and Kamara. I really, you watch the tape of Kamara, he's just so good on tape. I don't care if he's 6'1.5". The dude can play. And and I'd say that about Ellis, but I'm unsure. I don't know what the medical is. Is the shoulder bad, or is it just, he got it fixed and he's good to go? But some of those guys, there will be some of those guys will be there when they're picking at 75. There's no question. Who? I don't know. Because when you look at the defensive tackles, okay, there's a guy that many thought would go in the first, but he's coming off a foot injury. That's Newton from Illinois. Okay, so I would think he's gonna be one of those guys that's gonna jump out in the early part of the second round. Yep. You got Chris Jenkins from Michigan. You got the name we can't talk about, we can't pronounce. Orhoro.
Close enough.
Yeah, from Clemson. Now, a lot of people like Brandon Fisk. I like Brandon Fisk, the player. I don't want him here. He's got 30-inch arms.
Yeah, he's a short arm.
Real short arms. Your guy you talked about earlier in the week, and Brandon Dorlus, pretty darn good player. But I don't think he's a 3. I don't think he can play the end. Could you put him outside for a few downs and get away with it? Yeah. But in knowing what you want at this defense, he's not a guy you want all the time there. you can rotate them a little bit, but you wouldn't want them more than about 10 snaps a game, if that. Then you got Michael Hall from Ohio State. He's a bitch now.
Yeah.
Gabe Hall, probably a third or fourth round from Baylor, good player, and Mason Smith from LSU. Those are some really good defensive tackles out there.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 defensive tackles, and I didn't leave. I left out some of the real big guys because they're not fits here, but other teams are going to like them.
Right.
But there's 8 of those guys, and there's 8 defensive ends. So somebody's going to be there at 75, and somebody pretty good. But who? I don't know.
Yeah.
The offensive line, you got 2 centers.
Hey, Greg, before you go there, I got a question here that is defensive related, so we'll stay on that topic. Somebody asked, Kay asked, do you like Bud Dupree or Emmanuel, I think, Ogba as free agent edge signings? You mentioned Yannick Ndakwe and possibly re-signing him, but would you look at Dupree or Ogba?
Dupree has really gone downhill in the last couple of years and had no production. And really the same for Ogba. He got a big contract and didn't do shit. He just played terrible, and that's why Miami cut him loose. So was he? What we don't know, and it's when you do your research on the players, is when these guys got the money. Both of them were free agents that got money. So did they check out once they got the money?
Yeah.
It's a big guarantee. And so, I'd rather have a guy that's hungry, that's going to play. Could you say, somebody brought up Coleman from the Jets. He's another guy that's got real short arms.
Right.
I mean, like 31-inch arms. Can you get away with it? Yeah, but that's not what you're looking for.
Right. All right. Offensive line. Take it away.
The 2 centers are there, Powers Johnson and Zach Frazier, but they're going in the second round. And they're probably going in the top half of the second. The Bears aren't, and they're not going to. They traded for a guy, gave up a 5th round pick, and then they signed the guy. Between the 2 of them, they got $7 million tied up for this year. That position's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the resources that we have available, it just seems like it wouldn't be a good investment to go for a second round center. Tim is asking, what are your thoughts on Zach Frazier specifically? Is he a scheme fit, and would you consider moving up? You're basically saying no to that, right?
No, and he's going to go in the top 8. I don't think they can possibly get into the top half of the second.
Yeah,
you'd have to give up next year's 1. Neither one of those guys are worth next year's 1.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, so to get into the back part, you can probably give up your 3rd, and then next year and that high 2 from hopefully high 2 to get in that. But I'm not. There's no way that I'm almost reluctant to do that unless they got to really like the guy. I'm going to keep going back to it has to be a specific player, and it's got to be a guy on their board that they really like. They're driven to have. Otherwise, they're not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things you talked about Greg, one of the things you talked about last year when the Bears decided not to draft a center is you said you wanted and you heard from some of your sources that the Bears wanted a veteran center to work with Justin Fields. Wouldn't that be the same kind of thinking for Caleb?
Absolutely. It's a setup for disaster to have a rookie quarterback and a rookie center.
Yeah,
because the center is the glue of the offensive line, and he makes all the line calls. Now you got a quarterback who doesn't know what he's doing either. I mean, the whole center of your offense would be 2 inexperienced people, and you're just asking for disaster to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I got a question here from Victor that just came in. What do you think about Beebe? Will he be available at 75, the interior offensive lineman? I think he's from Kentucky, maybe.
No, he's from BB is from Kansas State.
Kansas State. Sorry.
I'm not sure he's a fit. If you look at the guys they have, they're all really athletic guys. Okay, because you're playing an outside zone scheme. So they got to be able to play in space. I got his name down as a maybe. And during the day today, if I got a chance, I got to go back and look. The same with Christian Haynes. He's from UConn. He's a big, powerful guard. But is he a fit? I don't know. The only the guard that I can see as a possible fit is Mahogany from Boston College.
Boston College, yeah.
And then the tackle, the guy that I think would be the most interesting to the Bears, and I gotta pray that I'm going to say this name right. Amagadeji, and I think I got it.
I think you did.
from Yale, who's a local kid, and not a good athlete, a great athlete. Now, a lot of people think he's going in the third round. So if that's the case, well, you got to make a choice. You got to take him, who's going to be a backup and a swing tackle, versus a edge who can be a potential starter. But again, how's it look on the board? Now, if he was there in the fourth, I'd jump. But he's raw. Played at Yale, hasn't played against great competition, but he is, it's like Braxton Jones. He's raw because he played at a lower level of comp. He's got like 36-inch arms, got great feet, great change of direction, great balance, natural bend, does a lot of things well, but he did it against Ivy League competition. So what's he going to do against NFL competition? And hey, Braxton Jones came in and played every snap. So is it impossible? No. We know this kid, if he went to Yale, he's pretty damn smart. So, I wouldn't hold it against him. The other guys, but like Blake Fisher from Notre Dame, he's played some left tackle. His freshman year, he played some left tackle, and then he hurt his knee. And then when he came back, they moved out, was playing by then, and they moved him over to the right side. He can get away with playing. He can get you out of a game at left tackle, but he's a right tackle. Okay. And you got Caden Wallace, Penn State. He's a right tackle. Okay. Right now, they don't have a swing guy. And, they signed a guy, Matt Pryor, in free agency. I think he's played some on the left side. Yes. But is he really what you want? Who knows?
Yeah. Back to the defensive line for a second here. Only ask a question that I've heard asked a number of times. Do you see the Bears moving Gervon Dexter to defensive end and maybe drafting a tackle? Now, Dexter has played a lot of snaps at defensive end with the Bears in his rookie season. A lot of people may not know that. And when I say a lot, I'm saying 15, 20% of his snaps were on the outside. So what do you think about maybe seeing Dexter have more snaps on the edge and then focusing on getting one of these fine DTs?
I mean, I can't see that happening. He's like a guy that, you get by with him for some snaps, like I said, with Dorless.
Okay.
But is he what you want out there all the time? No, he's 300 and some odd pounds. And in this scheme, speed and be able to get upfield and rush the passer from the outside is what you're looking for an end. And so, they drafted him to be a 3-tech, and he's going to be a damn good 3-tech. So why fuck him up and put him outside? where he's not playing the position he's made to play.
Yeah. Lee asked the question, what determines a right tackle from a left tackle? Is it like being right-handed and learning how to write left-handed?
Now, generally speaking, but things have changed some, is that your best pass rusher is your right defensive end. And so you need your best athlete playing left tackle,
Right.
which is, so you need a guy who his lateral agility is better, got really quick feet, recovers, can slide to the outside, plant, come back to the inside. When a guy does the defender does an outside inside type move, you've got to be a really superb athlete. And that's what Braxton Jones is. That's one of the things I really like about him, is he's a excellent athlete. There are very few guys in the league that are as less athletic as he is. Mm-hmm. He's just raw, and you need to get stronger in the lower body.
So it's more about agility. I remember reading,
and length too. You got to have length.
Yeah, I remember reading from Brad Biggs, and I think I shared it on a show a year or two ago. Brad Biggs said that it was like, it's like a golfer. It's so difficult to move from the right to the left, because it's now you're asking somebody to use left-handed clubs when they normally use right-handed clubs. And if I remember correctly, you disagreed with that analogy.
Yeah, I mean, number one, you got to look at what did they do in college? What's their experience? Have they played right and left or whatever?
Yeah.
There's some offensive schemes in college where you got strong side, weak side. So they're playing both sides.
Mm-hmm.
They might be the strong side tackle. So if you got your strong side to the left, he's playing left tackle. If your strong side to the right, he's the right tackle. And so they learn how to play out of both stands. It's changing your footwork. It's having your opposite foot back. It's the difference in hand usage. But what it is takes reps. So
mm-hmm.
when you get the practice reps, it becomes second nature. But if let's say you've always been a right tackle, last year's number one, you could use him as an example. He played 1 year on the left side. The rest of the career, he's been 1 year on the left side. Rest of his career, he's been a right tackle. Athletically, he can do it, but he doesn't have a lot of experience on the left side. And Darnell, he can be a dominant right tackle. So why would you do that to him?
Yeah. Right.
And in the game, the way it is now is and I remember this goes back to the late 90s and early 2000s when I was with New York and John Fox was the defense coordinator. And we went to the Super Bowl following the 2000 season, even though we lost. But John's thinking, and John was kind of ahead of the curve as a defensive coordinator, is, we had Michael Strahan, pretty good pass rusher. And Michael was at first playing on the right side. John said, no, I'm going to put him on the left side. Why are you doing that? Because the right tackle is generally the worst athlete. And so where the left tackle is the best athlete, I want the matchup. And more and more people started doing that. So what it means is that, in essence, you need two left tackle athletes playing in this game. Can you get by with the slower, bigger plotter type guy on the right side? Yeah, but you'd rather have a guy like Darnell Wright.
Yeah. Good stuff. Scott has a hypothetical for us. Since we hear this draft does not have much depth in the late rounds, is it worthwhile to package 75 and our fifth to move up? Would it get us much, or is an extra player more valuable? I've thought about this a lot.
We don't have a fifth. We only got a fourth.
so 122 and 75. I think that's what Scott means. Would you package those two picks in order to move up for a player that you covet that might be there, and then just walk away with three players from this draft?
I don't know how, giving up that fourth, I don't know how much higher you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, if you want to go up to, okay, they're at 75, and you want to say get up to 55, 53, around in there, you're going to probably have to use next year's too. One of those next year's two to get that. And the one that they're going to want, you're going to offer your own.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to counter and say, no, I want Carolina's.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, I got a few more questions. Greg and I are going to keep it to an hour because we got a long day ahead of us, and it was a long day yesterday. I'm not even going to attempt this name, but he or she asked, what do you think about Carolina grabbing Xavier Legette with the final pick of round 1? I thought that was a bit of a reach. What'd you think?
He's a good player. He's got the potential to be a pretty good X receiver.
Mm-hmm.
1 year of production. I liked his tape. What I didn't like was at the combine when he ran the gauntlet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was all over the place. And that's one of my favorite drills because that's hand-eye coordination and find the ball real quickly.
Yeah.
And he had a bunch of drops in that. You're supposed to run a straight line. He was weaving all over the place. You could look at a guy like Lad McConkey, who was a straight line, caught everything, got rid of the ball real quick, and
very impressive.
Went out from there. And Rome was the same way. They ran the gauntlet really, really well. Legette didn't. So that bothers me. So that tells me he could potentially have some drops because he's not going to find the ball as well as you like. Buffalo needs a receiver really bad. They traded twice. They traded from 28 down to 32. Kansas City took a receiver after trading up. Mm-hmm. And then they traded with Carolina 1 pick. Now they picked up a 3 and a 5 to do that. So, I mean, from a trade value, they did excellent. I honestly think they didn't want either of those receivers. That's why there's somebody else they were targeting. And that guy's still there. And it's either, I could be wrong, but it could be Mitchell from Texas, or I think the guy really is McConkey. But that's just me. I mean, nobody's told me that. I'm just looking at, the type of player McConkey. To me, McConkey is, they lost Stephon Diggs, or they traded him. That's Stephon Diggs all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Same size, same kind of speed, same kind of athlete. Just a really good, consistent player and a tough player.
What do you think of Chop Robinson? You're a fan of Chop Robinson.
Yep.
And Vince is asking, does Greg think Chop was overdrafted last night? Clearly not.
Hell
right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Were you surprised, Dallas?
He's a 4.48. He missed a few games, with an injury. I think he had a pull. He's raw. There's no question he's raw, but he's got, if you look at the overall, and I saw some of the stats last week, actually in far less rushes, he had far more pressures and hits on the quarterback than Verse.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even close. Verse had more sacks, but Verse had like 4 more sacks than Chop had. Chop's got to finish a little better, but his get off, the guy, I mean, he reminds me of Parsons, played at the same school. He's the same kind of athlete. I love his upside. I would have loved to see the Bears get him. He's going to be a handful. Miami's got him. He's going to be a handful in the AFC East.
Mm-hmm. Caleb yesterday talked about he and the Bears management team, coaching staff being on the same page.
When I met with the coaches, they didn't just tell me, they were showing me how we do it. And that's always big. I've always been a routine guy. I've always been, true to my word, committed to that and things like that. So they've been saying that they want to win. They've been saying that they're hungry and things like that. And then, when I went there on a visit, they were showing me, plans and how they do it and how they plan on implementing that and things like that, throughout the whole team, myself, to be able to lead these guys to victories.
Greg, the more and more I hear the guy, the more and more I'm impressed. I saw that hour-long interview he did on a podcast called The Pivot, and he's so heavily influenced by his parents. His father, a businessman, and as a child, he would see his father at work and how meticulous he was in organizing things and disciplined. And from his mom, he got all of the politeness that he displays, at least publicly, to us. So I'm starting to really, really like this guy. I liked Justin Fields, but now the promise here of Caleb Williams is really intriguing.
We talked about one thing with Justin. It's about the middle of the season, and in fact, it was a night game. Might have been the Washington game where he put up the big numbers, and when he came on TV after the game with the crew that was on the sideline, it was like a different guy than you saw in the press conferences here in Chicago. He was kind of in Chicago, he was always guarded and subdued when he was in a presser.
Yes.
And he was like a totally different person on that side. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally different guy. And I'm just, did the pressure of have to be good or whatever just have something to do with his makeup? Because he never looked happy.
No, he rarely ever smiled. Now, the Bears were playing poorly, and so he didn't have much reason to be happy. But I do believe, I'm speculating that there were some members of the Chicago media that he hated. Because
I would be.
And I think Caleb will probably have a different reaction to that. Ultimately, what matters is production on the field, and I know that's something that you're always preaching. So if somebody wants to be unhappy at the presser, be unhappy. Just win some games.
There was one thing I caught, and I'm I didn't listen to the whole thing, so I might be a little wrong on this.
Okay,
but it sounded. This was from Poll Thresher, that over the last couple of weeks, that Caleb and the Bears offensive staff have had quite a few Zoom calls.
Yeah, no, you're right. Shane Waldron and multiple Zoom calls with Caleb. Yes,
which that to me that's impressive on the Bears' part for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it shows that Caleb is buying in, and so you've already started the learning process.
Yeah. I think, Greg, one of the things that the NBA, I think, probably gets the most credit for this is players working with management to help form the team or having a say or listening to opinions. In the NFL, that hasn't always been the case, and we know that Aaron Rodgers, as much as we dislike him, I did sort of understand why he was upset with the Packers organization, where they didn't at least tell him that they were going to do this, or do that, or what they were thinking. Because I think that when you have a superstar player who is the face of the franchise, that person deserves at least inside information as to what's being thought of if they truly value that player and want that player to be with the franchise for years. Now, I'm not saying, what do you think we should do? And then go out and do it. I'm not saying that. But to give that person some ownership of the team as a leader of the team. What do you think about that?
It's an interesting concept, and you're right. It's just not done that often in the NFL. I think it depends on the player and the player's personality.
Yes.
Okay, if you're going to go and say, "Hey, Aaron, we want to do this," and he balks at it right away, well, now you're screwed.
Yeah, right. I agree. Yes.
So, but they know it's the right thing to do. Meaning that the front office knows it's the right thing to do, but now it becomes a situation where you're shoving it down the player's throat versus
Yes.
just doing it.
Right.
And then, he might not like it at first, but, he's got to live with it. When you tell him you want to do something and he says, no, I don't want, that doesn't work for me. And then you do it anyway, that can lead to a problem.
Yeah. What was interesting about that soundbite from Caleb is that he said that he sat with the team and they were showing him how they're doing it, because Caleb was asked, about the history of the Bears and the quarterback situation and not winning and so forth. And he wanted to know from the Bears, well, what are you doing to change things? And they didn't just tell him we want to win. They told him this is how we're going about it. And so I think Ryan Poles is probably very good at laying out a plan and being very convincing, which is how he got his job when he interviewed with George McCaskey.
Right. He's sharing a plan with Caleb and saying, and this is how you're going to affect the plan.
Right. What do you think about Caleb saying that he was asked, who would you like the Bears to draft at 9? And he said Olu Fashanu, because I played together with him in high school. And Olu said that he would protect me with his life. What'd you think of that?
That was before the draft, though. That was yesterday. Right.
Yes, that was before that.
Yeah, sticking up for your guy.
That's what I thought. He probably didn't really mean it, but it's a good lifelong buddy, and so you want to give him some props.
Yeah, and then on Tuesdays flying to Detroit, and he ends up being on the same flight as Rome. So
How about that? All right, Al, what are your expectations for tonight? Is it going to be a snooze fest because we're only going to have one pick, or will there be drama? Or what?
Yeah, I think you gotta, you watch to see if they in fact try to move up and do something. Mm-hmm. And if not, just, who's still going to be there if they stay at 75.
Right.
And, I'm just hoping that there's some guys that I like, that just because I like them doesn't mean they like them, right, but get overlooked, and they're there, and the Bears got an opportunity to take them.
You and I will be back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. And Greg, you're bringing along a very special guest. Who is that?
Yeah, Eric. How do you say his last name? Derwalker from
something like that.
Windy City Gridiron, and this is the best part about him. I'll say it again tomorrow. He is a career military guy, and he's in the Navy, and a huge Bears fan. But here's the key part, and what's very, very impressive. He's been in the Navy 12 years. He went in as an enlisted man. Mm-hmm. He just became an officer.
Wow.
Okay,
wow, that's
so
dedication.
Yeah, and that's not an easy thing to do. Mm. And he'll probably be in for a lot longer. His dad works for the government. Does some really cool things, but I'm not gonna. That's not for me to say.
Yeah.
What? But
he writes really well about the Bears. He writes a column a week or something like that, right?
Yeah, and a real good guy. He says a lot on X. He was off for a while because when he was in OCS, which is Officer Candidate School, mm-hmm. They like took his phone away from him. They were like in deep training for like 6 weeks. So
yeah,
most of it was during the football season, I'm sure.
Well, I can't wait to meet him tomorrow. I can't wait for tonight to see what we do with 75. I can't wait to see if there's going to be any trades. And there's so many good prospects for day 2. that I'm anticipating it being a fun watch. And Jordan Silvera, Danny Shimon, and myself will take you through the action starting at 6 p.m. Central. Any final words there, Greg?
Nah, just I hope I can get a second win and get a workout in before I take a nap.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip the workout and go straight to the nap.
I got to get a workout in, but I also want to get a nap in because I know we'll be up till probably midnight, and then we got another show at 9 a.m. So I went to bed probably at midnight and I was up at 6, so I didn't get a lot of sleep.
Yeah, same here. Well, thanks for being here, your dedication and your knowledge. Everyone in the chat is saluting you for sharing all this information with us, and we really appreciate it. That'll do it for this episode of GTF. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Bye-bye.
See ya. Thanks, everybody.